I'm Dr. Orion Taraban, and this is PsycHacks, Better Living Through Psychology. And the topic of today's short talk is, she takes and takes. This is a refrain that I hear from time to time from the men in my consultation sessions. They are resentful and bitter over the fact that, from their perspective, the women in their lives just seem to strip them of their resources, whether that's their money, their time, their attention, their commitment, and offer little to nothing in return. This, predictably, leads to these men feeling unappreciated and disrespected in the transaction because, like it or not, there is a value exchange that undergirds any relationship. Just think about it. Pretty much every fight that couples have centers around the perception that one person has been giving a lot more than he or she is receiving. And why would that matter if relationships were primarily based on love? Of course, people generally selectively emphasize the value they give and selectively de-emphasize the value they receive, but this perceived lack of parity is basically the source of most relationship conflict. In any case, when I hear a man tell me that he's with a woman who just takes and takes and takes from him, I like to reframe the problem. Generally, when I hear this refrain, I respond, "Geez, that sounds awful, my dude. Do you need help filing a police report?" And when they look a little baffled, I follow up with, "Well, you tell me that she's taking from you, so I assume that's against your will and consent, in which case that's robbery, and you should definitely go to the police and file a report." And you'll never believe this. At this point, the man tends to walk back his complaint and clarifies that the woman in question is actually not stealing from him. So why do I do this? In order to reframe this man's problem so that his interpretation of the facts is closer to reality. The problem is not that there's a woman who takes and takes and takes. The problem is that there's a man who gives and gives and gives. That's the issue. It's really important for people, men and women, to frame problems so that they are their responsibility. Why? Because people are only able to respond to problems that are their responsibility. When men frame the problem as a woman takes and takes and takes, then on some level, he's perpetuating a perception of himself as a victim of a woman's insatiable greed and selfishness. And what can a victim really do except roll over and hope against hope that his abuser or oppressor is going to stop abusing or oppressing him, which, spoiler alert, very rarely, if ever, happens. So the problem is not that this woman takes and takes and takes. After all, how would she be allowed to do that without the man's participation and consent? In point of fact, most people, when given the opportunity, will take and take and take, especially if the good in question is presented as being freely offered, which is typically the case in romantic relationships, right? Like, why wouldn't someone take something they want that seems to be freely given? So there's really no point in piling on women for this one. It's more or less human nature to take what you want when it's presented in that way. The real issue here is that the men in question are giving, and they're giving things that, in their heart of hearts, they don't really want to give. And this is what leads to the bitterness and resentment. Now, men do this for a few fundamental reasons. If you appreciate the insights on this channel, I would highly encourage you to get your hands on a copy of my book, The Value of Others. Over the course of 432 pages, I delve deep into my economic model of relationships and explain the behavior of both men and women in the game of mating and dating. I also provide a lot of actionable advice on how to get and keep more of what you want in the sexual marketplace. Once you read The Value of Others, you'll never look at relationships the same way again. Now available in ebook, audiobook, and paperback formats. The links are in the description. First and foremost, men give and give because they are afraid of saying no to the woman in question. Now, why might he be afraid of that? Because saying no can lead to tears, can lead to tantrums, can lead to withdrawal, can lead to revenge. Most people, not just women, don't like being told no. And if people aren't told no sufficiently, or if they don't possess sufficient self-discipline, which is a lot of people, then you may have to deal with some expensive interpersonal reactions. Men also don't like dealing with the emotions that come up in them when dealing with an upset or distraught woman. And so they act in such a way as to avoid contact with those emotions as much as possible. When men talk like this, I ask men to consider what is more important to them: preventing a woman from crying temporarily or surrendering the resource in question. Because if it's the former, then that resource must not be all that valuable, in which case I don't have a lot of sympathy for the situation. And of course, if it's the latter, then this can help men stay more focused and motivated to protect their resources. Let her cry. Let her feel disappointed. She's entitled to her feelings. Just keep in mind that most women don't actually cry when you tell them no from the get-go. They cry when you tell them yes and then tell them no. Like, if you want to make a baby cry, first give it a lollipop and then take the lollipop away. That's going to lead to a bigger tantrum than simply refusing to allow the candy to begin with. Something to keep in mind. In most cases, when a man is giving what he doesn't really want to give because he fears the emotional consequences of withholding, this is because he is afflicted with scarcity mentality to some degree. That is, these men are not only afraid of the woman becoming upset, they're afraid of the woman becoming upset and leaving. And they're afraid of the woman leaving because they believe they'll be left with nothing. And that, as unideal as the current situation they are reluctantly consenting to happens to be, it is preferable to nothing. However, as is so often the case with the rationalizations that support suboptimal decisions, this is a false dichotomy. There are more than two options here, and it behooves a man to cultivate that optionality in his life. Think about it. Every successful man is successful to the extent that he has been able to cultivate abundance in his life, an abundance of friends, an abundance of money, an abundance of opportunity. Women are no different. Considering a man without options to be successful with women is kind of like considering a man without discretionary income to be successful with money. Now, it's hard, if not impossible, to fake the confidence and security that come with abundance. But once you succeed in securing it, it's a complete game changer with respect to your relationships. As Teddy Roosevelt advised, you will now be able to speak softly and carry a big stick. No need to rub it in a woman's face. That's just ungentlemanly. If you have real abundance, she's gonna know. Like, do you think Leonardo DiCaprio has to remind the women he's dating that there are actually plenty of other women who would be happy to be in her position? She is well aware of that fact. And that awareness motivates her to show up to the relationship as the best possible version of herself. True wealth, true abundance is something that precedes you. As such, it solves a lot of problems before they even arise. In any case, I would ask men who seem to find themselves with women who take and take and take to examine themselves as to why they might feel like they have to give and give and give. Work on your interpersonal boundaries and keep an eye on the underlying value proposition while cultivating abundance. Do this, and you might be able to construct a relationship structure that you'd be enthusiastic about maintaining. What do you think? Does this fit with your own experience? Let me know in the comments below. And please Send this episode to someone who you think might benefit from its message, because it's word of mouth referrals like this that really help to make the channel grow. I know you know somebody who needs to hear this episode. Other value propositions: anyone looking to join my free weekly newsletter, for which I write original content, or to book a paid one-on-one consultation with yours truly, can find out more information on my website. There's also my best-selling book, The Value of Others, in which I extrapolate my economic model of relationships, and my private member community, The Captain's Quarters, in which, among other things, I host live bi-monthly group consultation calls. The links to everything are in the description below. Check them out if you are so inclined. They're there for you. As always, I appreciate your support, and thank you for listening.